Some call me Steve, Dad, husband, or friend. Others might call me boss, coach, or mentor. Today you can call me the Leadership Hacker. Thanks for listening in, I really appreciate it. My job as the Leadership Hacker is to hack into the minds, experiences, habits and learning of great leaders, C-suite executives, authors and development experts so that I can assist you developing your understanding and awareness of leadership. I'm Steve Rush and I'm your host today. I'm the author of Leadership Cake, I'm a transformation consultant and leadership coach and can't wait to start sharing all things leadership with you. Our special guest on today's show is Dan Berger. He's an economist, leadership expert and president and CEO of NAFCU, the National Association of Federally Insured Credit Unions. But before we get a chance to speak with Dan, it's the Leadership Hacker News. Most of us would agree that empathy is an essential ingredient in leadership. In my book Leadership Cake, empathy is in fact the E in cake. And a lack of this essential ingredient became a talking point on the 9th of February when it emerged that an article in the Guardian newspaper called out that KPMG boss and chairman Bill Michael had urged staff to stop moaning about the effects of COVID-19 and get on with their jobs. In a staff video called the previous day, recordings of which soon made their way online, Bill Michael had also gnashed his teeth at employers, saying they were playing the victim card with regards to current working conditions, and also rallied against his own firm's inclusion efforts by saying, "There's no such thing as unconscious bias, I don't buy it. Because after all, every single unconscious buying training this firm has ever done, nothing's ever improved." How ironic is that, huh? As shock and confusion reverberated through KPMG's workforce, Mr. Michael issued an apology saying, "I'm sorry for the words that I used, they did not reflect what I believed in. I have apologised to my colleagues. Looking after the well-being of our people and creating a culture where everyone can thrive is of critical importance to me and at the heart of everything this firm does." However, a few days later he announced his resignation, with the senior elected board member Bina Mehta replacing him as chair. Michael's empathy gap sparked a significant amount of commentary across the world and across the press, with Gemma McCall, head of a bullying prevention software firm called Culture Shift, told The Guardian, "Leaders really do need to take heed and exceed expectation when it comes to creating a safe and supportive environment for all employees." News of Mr. Michael's blunt and bracing staff call coincided with the Financial Times publication of readers' feedback highlighting a wave of pandemic burnout that has hit the paper's audience of white-collar professionals. Based on anecdotal responses from 250 readers from around the world, the FT's piece laid bare the strain of the past year as employees tried to struggle with their work-life balance, and often with their leaders' responses not particularly well aligned. A reader named Julie explained that she'd suffered palpitations in the first 2020 lockdown, compounded further by worries of her husband being stuck at work overseas. In addition, she wrote resources provided by her employer failed to address her workload, saying, "I received no support or help for the projects I was expected to deliver. I had strict deadlines and no extra time to deliver them." When Julia herself eventually caught COVID-19, she had to work through her illness, and that situation led her to endure a protracted 2-month recovery. So as leaders, remember, people are our biggest asset and their health and well-being are essential to you if you really want to drive great customer experiences, deliver revenue and grow your business. It's not a nice to have activity. Adjusting expectations, flexing the working day, extended deadlines and whatever can be done to make people's working lives a bit better and a bit more manageable should be top of any leader's agenda right now. So if we find ourselves getting grumpy for not delivering the performance we expect from our team, it's important to take stock and recognise by stepping into the shoes of those that are working for us who truly understand their concerns and their experiences. Otherwise we create our own empathy gap. And one thing we can be certain of, it seems like Bill Michael got that wrong, didn't he? That's been the Leadership Hacker News. If you have any stories, news, insights, please get in touch. Dan Berger is our special guest on today's show. He's the president and CEO of NAFCU, which is the National Association of Federally Insured Credit Unions. He's proudly advocating for the $1.5 trillion credit union industry in the US, along with its 122 million consumers. Dan's also an economist, a leadership expert, and an author, but delighted that we have him on the Leadership Hacker podcast. Welcome to the show, Dan.
Thank you, Steve. My pleasure.
It's been a while since you and I last met. What I'm keen to really kind of understand from your perspective and to get a bit of a summary for our listeners is the backstory to how you've arrived at being the president and CEO of NAFCU. How did it all start for you and where did it all come from?
Where it all started was growing up in Gainesville, Florida, and just always was a political junkie. Worked on political campaigns. And in the U.S., politics is genuinely a who you know type of industry. And it just kind of builds upon itself, and you get people elected to different positions, whether it's on the local basis or state basis or the federal level. You start developing a pretty serious network, and the more people you know from a networking standpoint, where you can educate elected officials or public officials, your value grows as an advocate. And I was a lobbyist. I was hired as a lobbyist up here in Washington, D.C., and then I was hired as the head lobbyist of NAFCU, and then the board appointed me CEO 7 years ago, and that's how I got this seat.
Awesome. And I guess what you do now requires an enormous amount of politics, but in a much more of a different sense. How do you see the parallels from the traditional political sense that you've been in before to what you do now?
What I do now, it's an expanded role. It's like three-dimensional chess. It's that perfect convergence of policy and politics and business. Yes, there's the lobbying component, lobbying the White House and the Congress and the relevant regulatory agencies. But there's also the business aspects of running a trade association. I mean, we're a $30 million business. And so just because we're a nonprofit, we still have to have revenue and income to keep the lights on so we can continue to advocate and educate, the public officials and the elected officials. So it's just a perfect convergence. It's just no dull moment. Everything's exciting, especially now. I'm sure everybody has seen it around the world.
Indeed, yeah.
What we've gone through in the United States in the last several weeks. One of the stranger environments I've ever been in my 30 years as a lobbyist. But no, it's been a very interesting couple of months.
And how has that shaped the landscape for the conversations you've been having with your members over the last, say, 3 to 6 months with what's been happening politically as well as economically around the world?
Yeah, from an advocacy standpoint, nothing's changed. We are a nonpartisan organization. We have Republicans and Democrats and libertarians and socialists and everybody. We lobby everybody. We're apolitical in that standpoint. So no matter who is in control of government or Congress or the Oval Office, we always have the ability to lobby. We're educators, and we educate them on the effects of regulation or laws that they pass. So it really doesn't matter who gets elected or who gets appointed. And so we're always prepared from that standpoint. From an economic standpoint, things will change, whether it's tax policy, more regulatory burden for our members sometimes tends to occur under a Democratic controlled Congress. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But we're prepared no matter what color stripes are being elected.
I know from the last time that you and I spoke, you were really passionate about the whole disrupting the credit union space. Where did you start with that, and what's been the main thing that you've seen that's been the biggest disruption that you've brought about as a force of good?
For a force of good, we really want to focus on having the legislative and regulatory landscape, the environment, being capable for the credit union industry to grow. Because in turn, the credit unions that I represent on the national level, they serve in turn 122 million American consumers. And so that's a lot of responsibility. So you want to create an environment for these financial institutions to be able to serve, whether it's better fintech and online banking, or less regulation, so they don't have to spend all those resources, whether it's money, time, people, and on the regulatory side, that they can focus on truly helping their members and helping their communities.
If you look at the world of credit unions, non-for-profits versus the corporate America or the corporate world that we live in, what do you see as the things that are consistent that you would see across all the businesses? And maybe what's the one thing from a leadership perspective that is really far out there and different from yours?
From a leadership perspective, we preach improving the culture. And I don't think it's just for nonprofits or trade associations. I believe strongly a strong culture will work in the for-profit realm as well. If you take care of your staff, if you focus on their well-being and having the tools and resources necessary to do their jobs well, in turn, they help your members or help their customers or your customers really well. You got to focus on that culture. And when we talk about culture here at NAFCU in our organization, we talk about hiring for attitude and aptitude. We can get you this training. You can have the skill set. But if you're a jerk, that does not feed into our culture. We want people with that passion and that enthusiasm to help credit unions because they know we're the best alternative in financial services. The best banking services are provided by credit unions. It's not the big banks. It's not the payday lenders or some of the other predatory lenders out there. It is institutions that were created to take care of the American consumer. And so if you focus on culture, you take care of your employees, in turn, they take care of your customer or your member.
That whole passion and fire in the belly has been an interesting subject that lots of people have tried studying over the past. But it's one of those things that you can't really train. You can provide the right environment to flourish and grow and develop that passion. But you can't actually train it. So how do you go about identifying that in potential recruits that you look for to join the organisation?
We have a series of various questions, almost case studies or scenarios, and how they react to those situations or those challenges or problems that have been presented to them really dives down. It's not the initial question that you ask a potential employee. It's usually the next follow-up question or two that you kind of drill down and get granular with. And you hear those trigger phrases, that they respond back to you. And you're like, you know what? That might not be a fit for our organization. And if you focus on hiring those with that passion and that enthusiasm to be a team player and to help grow, internally we have part of the review process, the employee review process. We have what's called an organizational citizenship review that goes through. How do you play in the sandbox with your colleagues? And that kind of culture, I mean, it really makes a difference. And Steve, people. There's this. You could give them $1 billion,
right,
and they will still be grumpy. There's just nothing you can do about it. It's the DNA. We just know people like that, and they tend to be a cancer on an organization. So we work real hard. We hire slow and we fire fast. And so we want that attitude and that aptitude, and it seems to work. We're not perfect, far from it, from any stretch. I think we're doing a pretty darn good job, but that focus is on our culture is what I think has really allowed us to grow and be a better organization.
And you see that with the way that you've evolved as an organization too, Dan. So you're one of the early adopters, if you like, of that innovating space in the credit union space, where you're looking at fintechs and innovation and new ways of working. Is it different that if I'm in an organization where I have shareholders versus members, how do I encourage my membership that that's the right thing to do with their money versus my shareholders?
No, I don't think it matters the makeup of the organization, because if you focus on staff, your shareholders are taken care of. Your customers are taken care of. If you hire a group of employees that aren't passionate, that aren't enthusiastic about helping your company grow or helping your customers become better, it has an effect on the bottom line. It has an effect on the bottom line of the nonprofit. it will definitely have an effect on the bottom line of a for-profit institution or company. So to be focused, when you walk into the lobby at NAFCU, we have a big sign on the wall, and it says, our staff is our most valuable asset. And the thing about it is you can't just put a sign in the lobby and just say that, because it doesn't mean anything. It's like buzzwords. It's like sticking up those motivational posters around the office. It has to be authentic. It has to be the leader at the top. It has to be the management team really singing from the same songbook, and of having that, hey, we want people with really good attitudes and smart, and they have the aptitude to learn. We want the enthusiasm and passion to make our company or our association stronger and better. But more importantly, help our members become better, help our customers become better. And in turn, everybody benefits. It's that rising tide raises all ships kind of theory.
Yeah, definitely so. So from your perspective, Dan, if we took a leadership lens over this, how do you think the role of the leader is going to change post-pandemic as we come out of the way that we've done things in the last 12 months?
I think we're early adopters to teleworking here at NAFCU, and it's worked out really well. We piloted and tested it and invested heavily in the digital infrastructure here. I like to say it was because we were prescient for the pandemic, but it was actually done for weather-related situations. When I became CEO, we had a 5 or 6 foot snowstorm, and it shut down all of Washington, D.C. It shut down NAFCU, and I said, we can't do this. So we need to invest in the digital infrastructure. We have to invest in the technology and the laptops and cameras and headsets and all that kind of stuff. My board of directors saw that vision and really was very supportive of us making a substantial investment in it. And so when the pandemic hit in I guess, March 13th, we shut down, we pivoted and we were digital. We were virtual within 24 hours. And so it worked out extremely well, where you saw a lot of companies and a lot of associations here in Washington, D.C. that spent months trying to get up to speed, spent months researching and investing in the new technologies required. We were already willing to go and roaring to go.
Great strategic thinking.
Sometimes, luck is, luck is a real thing. But, the harder we work and the more we strategize and try to be prepared, the more luck we seem to have.
Exactly. It's the old adage, isn't it?
Yes.
So one of the things that made me chuckle the last time we met, you have this huge personality and energy that comes with you, Dan, by the way, of which I'm sure our listeners are starting to get into. But the one thing that really made me chuckle is you've been known to turn up to your business meetings riding your Harley Davidson, leaving your members aghast as to here's this guy on a Harley in his leathers. What kind of response do you get when that happens?
It's sometimes a surprise to some folks, but usually they're not too surprised. But yeah, it started, my wife and I went out we have a big motorcycle rally here in the States called Sturgis. And you have, 1 million bikers show up in this small town in South Dakota. And what we did is we just rode around and visited credit union CEOs in a few of the states in the area. It was great. It was well received. It's a way for me to ride my motorcycle and to be genuine. It's who I am. I enjoy riding my Harley, and the reception's been pretty positive.
Awesome. So what do you think the reason is that more of us don't do away with that tried and tested corporate image and be more of our authentic self? What do you think stops us doing that?
I think it stops some people from doing it. And I think you see people who've had tremendous success being authentic. On your side of the pond, Richard Branson, tremendous. He's very authentic. He walks around in his flip-flops. Of course, it's in his private island in the Caribbean, but
sure.
But you can be authentic, you can be genuine, but you still have to be professional. And I know when to be, the Dan Berger on the Harley, but I'm also know when to, put a sport coat on, or the environment that I need to show respect to an elected official or a public official and wear a tie. I think it's just common sense. But for me, it's who I am. I love to fly fish. I love to ride my motorcycle. And so that's authentic. It's just me. It's what I do. And on occasion, I share that image. And in terms of executives, there's kind of a voyeuristic urge for people to learn more about their leaders and the CEOs of companies and associations. And if you get a peek of your authentic self, I think that it helps with engagement and it helps with connection. Because there's others out there like, you know what, I always wanted to ride a motorcycle, or I also ride a motorcycle, or you know what, I too love to go fly fishing. And so there's that personal connection you kind of develop as well.
Yeah. I think the pandemic's also helped with that, hasn't it? In the fact that we now are all Zoomed in or MS Teamed in or whatever medium you use. There's an opportunity here to show a bit more of yourself and, you know, your study at home or your kitchen or your lounge. And that in itself creates that intimacy that perhaps has been lacking in the past.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. And it's like, yeah, you can create a view into people's kitchens or their dining room. I've actually set up a studio in my house, in my office, that looks exactly like the one I have here at our headquarters, just to eliminate that so it looks a little more professional.
Yeah.
But we also talk about it, know your audience. There's times that you can, wear a hoodie and be very casual and stuff. But here, hey, we're a business casual organization, and just use your best judgment. And so we've had that discussion because there have been instances where someone's wearing a torn up sweatshirt, and it's just, and it's not an appropriate attire from that standpoint. Yeah, you want to wear a sweatshirt, wear one that's, nice, so you convey a professionalism. Just because you're on Zoom and it's a relatively informal presentation or informal video conference call, you still have to do it through a filter of, let's be professional, because your image is the image of the organization. So it kind of does matter.
Yeah.
But, it's all part of the new Zoom, Microsoft Teams environment.
It is, for sure. So what's next on the agenda for you and for NAFCU?
Well, for us, we have a new president, as you know. We have a new Congress that is, Democrats are in control of both chambers of Congress. And so all the appointments of all the regulatory agencies that we are concerned about and that we work with very closely, they're all getting new staffs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So for us, we've been already talking for months now with the transition team of President Biden's administration, and that'll continue to go. We've got new members of Congress we're talking to. We've already had meetings with the White House, meetings with folks on Treasury, the Federal Reserve, the NCOA, our prudential regulator. And so all those meetings continue to happen. It doesn't happen in the environment that I like because it's done on video conference calls. I'd much rather have a meeting in person, because you just get that feedback, and then I quite frankly enjoy interactions with my fellow human beings. And to do it, you just can't really do it appropriately, I don't think, and develop really close relationships online or on video conference calls. It's a good way to maintain a relationship, I guess, but I think you can't beat in-person contact. So
you're going to have a busy summer on the Harley then, I sense.
Yeah, typically I travel about 100,000 miles a year. And of course, last year was probably 1/10 of that. And, planes, trains, automobiles, an occasional donkey, and of course, my Harley. I like to get out and see the CEOs of our credit unions and see the members, because you get the feedback. And quite frankly, they spend a lot of money to be members of our association, and they deserve that high touch. We got all the high tech and that we talked about earlier, but that high touch to be out there, to be seen, to find out what's keeping them up at night and how we can be of help. That's just done in a much better environment when we see them in person.
So this part of the show is where I get to turn the lens on you and hack into your great leadership mind. So where I'd like to go first, Dan, is to just explore if you could distill all your years of experience into your top 3 hacks. What would they be? Take care of your staff. Invest in the technology so your staff can be more effective and efficient. And then probably lastly, take time off. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned throughout my career, that almost all the successful leaders that I talk to, that I read about, that I learn from, they all take time off. And then for me, that's fly fishing. For me, that's riding on my Harley.
It's me spending time with my wife and daughter. But that last component, I work long hours, as you do, and a lot of the leaders and CEOs that are listening to this, but you have to take that time off. You have to re-energize. And I feel great when I come back after a weekend of riding my motorcycle or fishing. I'm rejuvenated. I'm raring to go. And those are probably the top three that I would mention.
Yeah, great. It's interesting, the last one you mentioned, Dan, because so we run a program where we get people to think of themselves as corporate athletes. And if you think of the premise of an athlete, track and field, or whatever discipline you have, they always, after the event, will take time out and recover. Yet it seems that it's only recently that our global corporate life and this whole philosophy of recovery seems to play in. And it's not a reward. This is an absolute essential activity to be a successful leader in the future, right?
Yeah, and I would add a fourth to that, Steve. I would say exercise. I think you have to not only put your mental state and have some self-care involved in relaxing and taking some time off and getting some downtime and putting in your smartphone in the drawer and just disconnecting for a while. But you have to exercise as well on a regular basis. I lift weights, and my wife and I walk 2 or 3 times a week. But that kind of stuff's extremely important as well. I think it's the full experience of being a leader. You have to continue to want to learn. I mean, I'm reading new books all the time, as you do, I know, and new articles. I'm always constantly trying to be a sponge and learn new things and reinforce things I may have forgot or reinforce things I knew but haven't thought of in quite some time. But I think comparing it to athletes is spot on.
Awesome. The next part of the show we've affectionately become familiar with is called Hack to Attack. So this is where typically something hasn't worked out well. It could be personal or work, but as a result of the experience going south, you've taken a learn from that, and it's now positive in your life and your work. So what would be your hack to attack?
How I communicate. And I had an executive coach earlier in my tenure named John Spence. He's an author and he's a business.
Know John very well. He's been on our show too.
Oh, terrific. Well, John's from my hometown of Gainesville, Florida. And but he was my executive coach, and he still helps us and helps me. But he really helped me with my communication. And I'm an extrovert, and I'm high energy, and I'm go. And sometimes I have a tendency, unintentionally, not to come across. I'll be direct. I got so much stuff on my to-do list I want to check off each day and everything. I have a tendency sometimes to come across blunt or direct, and I don't mean for it to be, but you have to put yourself in the other person's chair. You're receiving it. Oh, so I got this one-line sentence. Hey, where are we on the XYZ project? And it's like, not a hello, not a good morning. Yeah. It was just, hey, I got a lot of stuff to do. Just give me the answer so I can get on with my day. And I learned early on that EQ in your communication matters. And I've got EQ throughout everything else in aspects of my leadership and management style. But my email communication, I had to really transform and spend a little time. You do it. We walk around. I manage by walking around. There's a reason this whole environment is really kind of messed up for me. But we celebrate little victories and large victories and high fives and fist bumps. But you can't really do that electronically. And so how people receive your communication, especially electronically, matters. And that's really helped me a lot, because I still have to work at it. I still have to take a deep breath before I hit send to make sure that it's okay. Not because of the content of it per se with the issue or topic I'm trying to get answered, but just the approach to it. And that's been, I work on it every day, Steve, every single day.
The fact it's conscious for you is really quite healthy, because we're all innately built in a certain way, and we've created habits and behaviours that are innate. And yet sometimes we need to make sure that we get rid of some of those things that don't serve us well, but we play on the things that do. And as long as we're conscious about that, we'll be successful.
Well, I agree completely.
Dan, you can let us into the secret. Where was the moment that you thought, I need to fix this? Has there been a belter of an email you've sent somebody that you thought, uh-oh?
No, it was an employee survey.
Okay. Which is the best way to get any feedback, of course, because it comes in volumes then as well.
Oh, it really does, and it's and you got to have it, and they're right, and it's not intentional, and it's not me being gruff or I'm being grumpy, and we all have those kind of days, and I understand that. It's just at the time it's just so much on my plate. I'm trying to check all this stuff off. I want some, information on certain things we're working on to give it so I can give it to our board of directors, let's say. And then it's just, you can spend, another minute or two and draft an email. Say, hey, good morning, Cassie. Appreciate your work on this. Can you give me an update on where we are? Are we still on target to hit the 5 p.m. Friday deadline? Let me know. Thanks. And it's the same email. It took you 60 seconds longer to type it, and it makes them feel appreciated, and in turn, it just all part of the entire culture we're trying to create here. And we're a fast growing company. Our bus runs fast. We talk about it. We want to make sure the right person is on the bus, the right person is in the right seat on the bus, but you have to take a deep breath and say, hey, how I'm communicating with people, put yourself in that chair. Okay, you're a 24-year-old young lady, young man, and the CEO of the organization just fired off a one-sentence question to you.
Yeah.
How would you like that or not like that? And and it just gets there. It scares some people, and it's just, we all have insecurities. And so why magnify that for some poor colleague of yours? That makes no sense. And so I have to work on that.
Yeah. So the last thing we're going to do with you today, Dan, is give you a chance to do some time travel and bump into Dan at 21, and you get to give him some advice. So what would your advice to Dan be?
I think to try to become 1% better every day. I think when we're young, we have a tendency to have these really huge goals and want to hit grand slams and everything. But if you just get incrementally better every day, say 1% every day, those small improvements over a period of time are more satisfying. They have longevity. And I think that's the part. And it took me probably into my 30s to genuinely understand that. And I try to do that now, whether it's, reading. I got a news aggregator. I read every morning on my treadmill. And so you sit there and you read the news. I'm trying to gather all the information so I can be a better executive. I read leadership and management books on a regular basis so I can become a better supervisor or a better leader. Just at 1%, just every day. What did I do today? Become 1% better in any aspect of as a husband, as a father of a 16-year-old daughter. I'm trying very hard to become 1% better all the time. That's what I would have told my 21-year-old self.
Yeah, it's great advice. It's the laws of marginal gains, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is, and it's really helped me focus it, because everybody, especially in this environment now, Steve, as you know, it's just the instant gratification and the pats on the back and the awards and everything else you get when you hit those grand slams and stuff. But I have found that 1% theory gives you bigger rewards and more success than really focusing on those big projects and big challenges and awards and stuff. It seems to multiply itself even faster and further, and has more longevity.
Yeah, agree. So Dan, if folk wanted to find out a little bit more about the work that you do with NAFCU, or indeed find out a little bit more of how they can connect with you and learn from your leadership lessons, where's the best place for us to send them when we're done? NAFCU.org, and of course I'm on LinkedIn at B. Dan Berger, and love to hook up with anybody that's listening. Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that we put links to NAFCU in our show notes, as well as your LinkedIn profile, so folk can head straight over.
Thank you, Steve.
Dan, listen, it's been absolutely brilliant chatting. You are a passionate guy, and I've loved the times that we've spoken together, And if you can continue to just grow 1% between now and the next 100 days, what a wonderful place this world will be. So thank you for being on the Leadership Hacker podcast.
Thank you, Steve. You're a gentleman and a scholar. Have a great 2021.
I genuinely want to say a heartfelt thanks for taking time out of your day to listen in too. We do this in the service of helping others and spreading the word of leadership. Without you listening in, there would be no show. So please subscribe now if you haven't done so already. Share this podcast with your communities and network and help us develop a community and a tribe of leadership hackers. And finally, if you'd like me to work with your senior team, your leadership community, keynote an event, or you would like to sponsor an episode, please connect with us via our social media. And you can do that by following and liking our pages on Twitter and Facebook. Our handle there is @LeadershipHacker. Instagram, you can find us there at @the_leadership_hacker, and at YouTube, we're just Leadership Hacker. So that's me signing off. I'm Steve Rush, and I've been the Leadership Hacker.